Hello and good morning, everybody.
Hello, how are you?
Absolutely fantastic. Is this Anthony?
This is Anthony.
Anthony, I am so excited to talk with you because we need to be educated. We need to learn more about the reality of what is going on behind so many closed doors, and we need authors like yourself.
Well, I appreciate that.
For you to step onto this path, what was it required inside your heart and soul? Because these are real, authentic words and expressions.
Well, I was concerned about a whole bunch of things, but I thought I've been a practicing psychiatrist for 5 decades, and I have some interest in why people get motivated. And I was kind of concerned that we're talking about civil war and
Yep.
people are buying a lot of AR-15s. We're banning books. I mean, I've been alive for a long time. I've never seen that in the past. So I thought it's something that we should be interested in, why we're banning books and sanctioning librarians. I mean, librarians of all people to be sanctioning is a little unusual, but I guess we're in unusual times. So I decided that, we need us white folks need a primer of some kind. And so as a consequence, I decided that it was time to write a book like this. So, I basically have thought that, we have 2 issues here. I mean, this book is written for, white people like myself, and I think I directed it at people that I know and in my everyday life, especially the men. And so I thought we need a primer on, why we're doing all these things. Why are we talking about civil wars and banning books and things like that? And what do all these terms mean? We hear these terms every day, like systemic racism, or structural racism, or all these words that we don't really know what they actually mean. And so I thought, now is the time to start defining these things and looking at what these things all mean. I think the other aspect of the book has to do with the political and financial profitability of exploiting the prejudices of white people. I mean, I think it's very profitable if you're able to somehow exploit that. During the 2016 presidential campaign, I can recall Donald Trump saying that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and never lose any supporters. And then when I discovered that was in fact true, I thought, well, I wonder what we're upset about and why why we have to ask these kinds of questions. So basically, those are the primary issues I try to address in the book. There's also a podcast, by the way, I have on Spotify, and the title of the podcast is the same title as the book, and we try to do some of the same issues, although less detailed fashion.
Well, you turn it into a conversation is what you do. And that's the thing about that podcast of yours is the fact that I feel like that I am sitting in the room with you, and it's not that you're trying to educate me. You're just saying, hey, here is what's going on. Can we just talk about it so that we can create an activation?
Right. And that's what I'm hoping to do. That's what I hope I am doing. And I, try to look at the various issues involved. I think, prejudice, I think I try to make a distinction between prejudice, which most of us have, for example, when I talk about, racial prejudice, all of us have some degree of prejudice against people we don't see frequently or that we don't understand very well. So as a white man, of course I have prejudices about black people. But at the same time, I then go on to try to define what's the difference between a person who simply has prejudices and a person or a situation that we call racism. So the word racism has kind of puzzled me. So what I try to do in the book is define it a little bit more clearly to try to understand, what those words actually mean, and why I think probably most white people are not racist, but, they're often referred to as racist because they simply have, what I think are common prejudices. Prejudices are false beliefs. There's a difference between somebody who has a prejudice and knows it and somebody who has a prejudice and doesn't know it. So anyway, I try to have a discussion about these various things, and I do have a point of view, as everyone does, but I try to broaden it as much as I possibly can. I use the example. For example, of Fox News, who, recently had a judgment of $787 million, for basically lying to its audience. But on the other hand, I think the audience, sort of wants to be lied to for some reason.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I'm saying I don't think that's a good idea, but that's a reality. This is the reality of the world that we live in. And if we want to look at it objectively, maybe we can do something rational. If we don't look at it objectively, we've got more trouble ahead, and we've got enough right now.
Yeah. We've even got a situation that started yesterday when the former president accused CBS for lying on 60 Minutes with that interview, saying that they went in there and redid the sound bites. I mean, and so people are going to believe that. I mean, we don't know if it's true or not. CBS hasn't really responded yet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of things like that. But like I say, I think, it's... If Fox can come up with almost $1 billion for lying, I mean there's obviously profitability in lying, and in the podcast I use the example of a sort of a 33-year-old man who's married with 2 children, ages 4 and 2. He makes about $46,000 a year. Now he has certain interests, but he dislikes blacks, he doesn't like queers, and he thinks liberals are out to take his AR-15 away from him. So obviously he's going to vote for somebody who, dislikes blacks and queers and hates liberals because they want to take their guns away. So when he votes for somebody, he votes for that person. On the other hand, that person goes to Congress and he votes for low taxes on billionaires. He votes to keep insulin at $700 or $800 a month. He votes against Obamacare, which he needs in order to have any kind of insurance coverage. He votes, against unions. He votes against consumer protection. He votes against college debt relief. But he gets to keep his AR-15. So I guess what I say in the book is, we have our priorities and we live with them.
Wow.
Whatever they are.
How do we calm down the invisible anger? Because it really feels like that people are saying, okay, you do what you got to do. I'm going to be over here. I'm going to sit on the sidelines. Just you go make the choices, and then we bitch and moan about it afterwards.
Yeah, I think, again, that's why I write the book, because I try to look at these issues in as objective a manner as I possibly can. So, my feeling is that if you try to understand these various issues a little bit better, maybe we won't be quite as angry.
Right.
I think most white people in the country feel that somehow we're under attack. We're the victims right now. And again, somebody like Trump accentuates that very intensely, because he says, we're the victims. The world is, the world is picking on the USA. The immigrants and non-white people are picking on white people. And I'm a white person, and I live with a lot of, people who have similar ideas. But at the same time, let's take a look at these things and let's see what they really mean, and let's think about, what we're doing here, and then decide whether we really need all of this stuff. And because I'm a physician, I talk a lot about how prejudice, makes some people rich, because they live with lower taxes. Most of the billionaires in the country, and there are quite a few. I mean, we're a very prosperous country, and I think that's good. But most of the billionaires in this country pay a lower tax rate than their secretaries do. So how does that happen? it happens because, there are some folks that are very good at exploiting white prejudice. And so, the problem is, I think, for the average white person, it's costing them more money to live in this country than it needs to because of that. I mean, they're not going to get any college support. I mean, when I went to medical school, which was a long time ago, my tuition was $150 a quarter,
Wow.
so I paid a total of $450 per year. Now, I went to a state school. I went to the University of Illinois, but, the other medical schools in the city, they were, maybe $2,000 a year in terms of tuition. Now, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just incredible. So obviously there was more support for education back then than there is now,
Wow.
realistically.
Wow.
The average American in 1900 spent $5 per year per person on health care. Now, I don't know if you've walked into an emergency room lately. In April, I'm a man in my 80s. I walk into an emergency with chest pain. Of course, they're going to pay a lot of attention to me. I walked out with a bill of $99,000 6 days later, and I'm pretty healthy, actually, believe it or not, after all that. And I wasn't having a coronary. But, I mean, to investigate that's kind of expensive. So the idea that, a few years ago, before Obamacare, somebody'd walk into an emergency room with nothing, a working person with a full-time job walks into an emergency room with no health insurance, I mean, they're going to be in debt for the rest of their life and never be able to get out of it. So I just think we need to think about these things, and I try to get people to think about these various issues.
Where can people go to find out more information about you, and especially your podcast? You said it was on Spotify, so that right there is a good hookup.
Right. It's on Spotify. It's on iHeart Radio, and Jesus, another one. I'm just got into the podcast business in August, so I'm not real familiar with this sort of thing or how they do it. But I have a website also, AnthonyDiagostinoMD.com, and there you can find some information about me. You can look me up online, I guess. That's what people do.
Wow.
There's a lot of Anthony D'Agostinos. One is a historian, and some people sometimes confuse us. He writes books about Russian history. I write books about psychiatry and of course, this prejudice thing. So that's why the MD helps when people look me up.
You got to come back to this show anytime in the future. I love where your heart is, and we got to activate people, but we've got to share each other's platforms to help do that.
No, I agree, and that's what I'm doing. Like I say, I've just only lately got into the writing business the last maybe 8 or 9 years, but I was too busy before. But now I'm retired and less busy, so I have a little more time for this sort of thing, and so I'm spending my time doing it.
I love it. Well, you be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Okay, thanks very much.